Jessica often went on business trips or attended conferences, and while it seemed a bit excessive, I was too blinded by love and trust to question it. Then one day, Samantha, an intern, approached me with a nervous and apologetic look. "Michael, I'm so sorry, but I overheard something you really need to know," she said, clearly hesitant. Samantha explained how she had overheard my boss, Victor, joking with some colleagues about how they planned to entertain themselves on an upcoming business trip. She even showed me some disturbing photos, images of Victor intimately kissing and holding another woman. My heart sank when I recognized who the woman was. It was Jessica, my own wife. Suddenly, things began to click. The endless conferences, Victor's inappropriate comments, and Jessica's recent strange behavior. All of it started making sense. I felt like the biggest fool for not seeing it earlier. At first, I was in denial, grasping for excuses. Maybe it wasn't what it seemed. Jessica would never cheat on me, right? But deep down, I knew the truth. The evidence was undeniable. My wife, the woman I adored and trusted, had been betraying me. And with my boss, no less. The shock hit me like a freight train. Once that subsided, a deep, burning anger took its place. How could she do this to me? To our marriage? I couldn't stop imagining the sordid details. Jessica being intimate with other men, casually stomping on the trust one had placed in her. It made my stomach churn with disgust. I knew I had to act, to uncover the full extent of her betrayal. That's when I decided to bring in professionals. I found a private investigator firm called Quiet Detectives, known for being exceptionally discreet. I set up meetings with them and other agencies to ensure I had every base covered. The next step was to find a ruthless lawyer who could protect my interests. Immediately, I thought of the firm Gray, Thompson & Clarkson, notorious for being relentless in court. I booked an appointment to meet with Alexander Gray himself. In the meantime, I lied to Jessica, claiming I had a bad stomach bug, and checked into a guest house. I needed time away to think clearly and plan my next moves. Emotionally, I was a wreck, but I was determined to gather proof and take decisive action. There was no way I'd let Jessica betray me and walk away with my $7 million trust fund. This was war. Holed up in that dingy guest house, I waited anxiously, knowing the truth was bound to surface. A few days later, Greg, the investigator from Quiet Detectives, called me. "Mr. Davis, I have some deeply unsettling information for you," he said in a somber tone. Greg revealed that his team had been trailing Jessica, Victor, and a few others on what was supposed to be a business trip. It wasn't a conference at all. They had checked into a luxurious hotel just outside Melbourne, and the entire trip was a debauched orgy. Can you imagine the audacity of these people? The investigators had caught Jessica in all sorts of compromising situations, not just with Victor, but also with Nathan Carter, my sleazy lawyer, and even some random strangers. The photos and videos they provided were downright explicit, leaving no room for doubt. I felt physically ill just hearing the details. But then it got worse. Greg shared that they'd picked up conversations hinting at a far darker plot, a twisted plan to get me out of the way permanently. That's right. My wife and the people I had trusted most seemed to be conspiring to kill me. And all for my $70 million inheritance. Hearing this, I completely broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried in years, raw, ugly sobs that left me trembling. How could Jessica, the woman I'd cherished, betray me like this? Worse still, to want me dead for money? It was like living a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The next few days blurred into a haze of despair. One moment, I'd be overcome with rage at Jessica's deceit. The next, I'd be consumed by the crushing grief of my crumbling life. The first meeting with Alexander Gray was a critical turning point in this nightmare. Alexander was exactly the kind of lawyer I needed, an unapologetic shark who didn't pull punches. "With the evidence we've gathered, Jessica's nailed," he said bluntly. "Adultery, breach of contract, and quite possibly conspiracy to commit murder. I'll bury that lying snake along with the rest of her co-conspirators." After the meeting, Alexander's wife, Melanie, approached me. Having experienced a similar betrayal in her own life, she offered a level of empathy I desperately needed. Pulling me into a warm embrace, she said, "Michael, you're not alone. We're here for you, and Alexander will do everything possible to protect you and your interests." That moment of kindness was like a lifeline, cutting through the fog of despair that had consumed me. With the Grays on my side, I finally felt like I could survive whatever Jessica and her accomplices had planned. It was time to go scorched earth on these backstabbers. Despite that small glimmer of hope, I was still a wreck. The paranoia was all-consuming. I couldn't shake the horrifying thought that the people I had trusted most were plotting to murder me. To stay safe, I began moving to a new hotel or motel every night, terrified that Jessica or her henchmen might track me down. Meanwhile, Alexander was preparing the legal equivalent of a nuclear strike. He drafted divorce papers accusing Jessica of adultery and breach of our prenuptial agreement. He also secured restraining orders to keep her and her conspirators as far away from me as possible. "Stay out of the office and avoid any contact with Jessica until we drop this bomb," he warned me. The following weeks were excruciating. Every second felt like an eternity as I waited for the inevitable fallout. I barely ate, slept, or functioned, consumed by anxiety and anger. The only bright spot in this entire mess was Samantha, the intern who had first clued me into Jessica's betrayal. Samantha and I began spending more time together, grabbing drinks and dinners. I found myself opening up to her in a way I hadn't with anyone else. She listened patiently as I vented about Jessica's deception, offering hugs and comforting words. It was clear she cared deeply for me, and though I wasn't ready to reciprocate at first, her kindness became a beacon of light in my darkest days. One weekend, Samantha suggested we escape the city and visit Phillip Island to watch the penguins. Alexander and Melanie joined us, insisting I needed a break from my self-imposed exile in hotel rooms. For a few hours, as I watched those tiny penguins waddle along the beach, I felt a rare moment of peace. Samantha reached over and held my hand, her warm smile sparking something deeper inside me. That night, over drinks, Samantha confessed she had romantic feelings for me. I was still raw from Jessica's betrayal, but I admitted I felt a connection too. Her declaration of loyalty, "I'll stand by you, no matter what," melted my defenses. For the first time in what felt like forever, I began to trust someone again. But just as I started to feel a sliver of hope, Greg, the investigator, called with another bombshell. His latest findings revealed Jessica's scheme wasn't just about stealing my money. No, her plans were far darker. Greg explained, in chilling detail, that Jessica intended to eliminate me after having my child. She wanted an heir to secure her claim to my fortune, but planned to have me killed once the baby was born. The audacity and cold calculation of her plot shattered me. I broke down in uncontrollable sobs, the sheer weight of the betrayal crushing my spirit. Samantha held me tightly as I let the anguish pour out, whispering reassurances while I struggled to comprehend how the woman I loved, the mother of my unborn child, could conspire to end my life. That moment of devastation also ignited a new determination. Jessica had shown me who she truly was, a ruthless, manipulative liar. If she wanted a war, I would give her one. I was done being the naive, trusting husband. I was done being the victim. Jessica had manipulated and betrayed me for the last time, and it was time to destroy her entire twisted world. No more second-guessing, no more mercy. Jessica and everyone involved in her disgusting schemes were going to pay dearly for their treachery. With her deranged murder plot now fully exposed, Alexander and I went into full scorched earth mode. His team worked tirelessly day and night to collect every shred of evidence and build a rock-solid case against Jessica and her conspirators. We weren't just aiming to win. We were out to utterly bury them in court. In the meantime, I played it cool at the office, pretending everything was normal. I plastered on a fake smile, trying to keep Jessica and the others from catching on to what was coming. But on the inside, I was simmering with rage. Seeing Victor's smug face or Nathan's greasy smirk every day made my blood boil. I had to resist the urge to knock them both out on the spot. Finally, the big day arrived. Alexander's plan was in motion. I told Jessica I had a migraine and needed to leave work early, but little did she know, I was being whisked away to a private airfield by Alexander's team. They weren't taking any chances. Jessica and her crew had already proven how dangerous they could be. I'll never forget the chaos that unfolded back at the office. Greg's investigators coordinated with the police, and they stormed the place. Arrests were made on the spot. Jessica, Victor, Nathan, and their accomplices were slapped in cuffs amidst a flurry of shouting and confusion. Jessica broke down, sobbing and screaming as her web of lies collapsed around her. Her tears and desperate pleas were music to my ears. Meanwhile, I was on a plane headed to Aiden's, a serene bed and breakfast nestled deep in the rainforest, with Samantha by my side. The place was run by the sweetest elderly couple you could imagine, a pair who treated us like family. For the first time in months, I felt safe. The insanity of Melbourne was behind me, and the peaceful surroundings were like a balm for my soul. Those few days in Aiden's were pure bliss. Samantha and I fell into a rhythm of simple, joyful living, waking up to incredible homemade breakfasts, exploring lush rainforest trails, and sipping cocktails by the pool. At night, we'd lie under the stars, wine glasses in hand, talking about life, love, and everything in between. One morning, as I was reading on the patio, Samantha came up behind me, planting soft kisses on my neck. "You're finally free, Michael," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. In that moment, all the pain and anger Jessica had inflicted on me just melted away. I turned to Samantha, pulled her close, and kissed her with a passion I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I realized this incredible woman was my true soulmate. A few days into our rainforest retreat, Alexander sent me a text. "It's done. You're a free man." I let out a sigh of relief that seemed to drain every ounce of tension from my body. Jessica, Victor, Nathan, and their entire corrupt crew were behind bars, facing criminal conspiracy charges. Even their companies were being pummeled by lawsuits. Alexander told me Jessica had a complete psychotic breakdown during her arrest and had to be sedated. Part of me felt a flicker of pity, but she had brought this on herself with her disgusting betrayal. With the nightmare finally behind me, I could focus entirely on healing and on Samantha. We spent the following weeks indulging in everything romantic: couples massages, sunset cruises, and nights under the stars. Let's just say we took full advantage of our privacy and rekindled something I thought I'd lost forever: the ability to trust and love again. Alexander and Melanie even flew up to join us for part of the trip, bringing their young daughter, Claire. It was a joy to celebrate my newfound freedom with them. We spent our days lounging by the pool, sharing drinks, and laughing about how we had dismantled Jessica's twisted empire. Alexander especially loved retelling the story of her arrest, grinning like a wolf every time he described the moment she was dragged out in cuffs. That man was a legal assassin, and I was beyond grateful to have him on my side. Those weeks in Aiden's were everything I needed to begin healing. Samantha's unwavering love and support became the foundation for my recovery. For so long, I believed Jessica's betrayal had ruined me, that I'd never be able to love or trust again. But Samantha proved me wrong. Her patience, kindness, and loyalty reminded me that true, unconditional love still existed. With Samantha by my side, I felt like a new man. It was as if I'd been reborn, ready to build a life grounded in honesty, loyalty, and true happiness, something I had almost given up on believing existed. After those blissful weeks at Aiden's, Samantha and I found ourselves bitten by the travel bug. We embarked on a whirlwind tour across Australia, exploring Brisbane, Sydney, the Whitsunday Islands, and countless other stunning places. Everywhere we went, it felt like we were in our own little love bubble, shutting out the rest of the world. Of course, Alexander kept us updated on the ongoing legal chaos with Jessica and her corrupt cronies. That pit bull of a lawyer was unstoppable, winning case after case. He secured restraining orders, massive financial settlements from the conspirators' companies, and ensured Jessica and her accomplices didn't see a single cent of my inheritance. Meanwhile, Samantha and I were living like love-struck newlyweds, even though we weren't officially married yet. We indulged in every cheesy, romantic cliché imaginable. Couples massages, candlelit dinners on the beach, and stargazing. The intimacy between us was electric, and let's just say those luxurious hotel rooms saw their fair share of passion. As incredible as the travel romance was, Samantha and I both knew it was time to settle down and build a real life together. We spent long evenings dreaming about the future, getting married, having children, and putting down roots. One night, as we sat beneath the glow of the Sydney Opera House, Samantha suddenly blurted out, "Michael, I want to have your babies." I was so shocked I almost fell off the bench, but overjoyed doesn't even begin to describe how I felt. From that moment, it was just a matter of making it official. A few weeks after we returned to Melbourne, I planned the most extravagant proposal imaginable. On a private rooftop terrace, decked out with rose petals, fairy lights, and breathtaking views of the city, I got down on one knee and presented Samantha with a stunning diamond ring. The look of sheer happiness on her face as she tearfully said yes was one of the most unforgettable moments of my life. We didn't waste any time. Samantha immediately began researching fertility treatments and dragged me to the doctor to make sure everything was in order. A few months later, we got the news we had been waiting for, a positive pregnancy test. I've never seen two people more ecstatic. During this time, Alexander continued racking up victory after victory against Jessica and her co-conspirators. In the end, Jessica was sentenced to 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, disgusted by her murderous plots, made an example of her, ensuring justice was served. To top it off, Alexander secured a massive divorce settlement, effectively wiping out Jessica's savings and assets. While I try not to take too much satisfaction in her downfall, I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good to see her face the consequences of her actions. With Jessica and her conspirators completely out of the picture, Samantha and I were finally free to focus on our future. We went all out, finding a jaw-dropping penthouse loft in Melbourne CBD. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, a rooftop pool, and every luxury you could imagine. The perfect place to start our new chapter. Those first few months in the penthouse were nothing short of magical. Samantha and I spent our days getting the space ready for the baby, picking out furniture, and decorating the nursery. At night, we'd take long walks around the city, hand in hand, dreaming about the life we were building together. Every evening, I'd come home from work and rub Samantha's growing belly, marveling at the little life we had created. Then, the big day finally arrived. Little Ethan Michael entered the world, healthy and crying his lungs out. Holding my son for the first time, with Samantha beaming beside me, was the most profound moment of my life. In that instant, all the pain and darkness from Jessica's betrayal faded away. This was the fresh start I had always dreamed of. The next couple of years were pure bliss for Samantha, Ethan Michael, and me. We embraced the simple joys of family life, strolling through the park with Ethan riding high on my shoulders, catching up with Alexander and Melanie at their favorite brunch spot, and spending weekends hosting pancake breakfasts with close friends like Greg and his wife, Stephanie, who had become part of our extended family. Our movie nights often included their kids, who adored Ethan, turning our penthouse into a lively hub of laughter. The love and warmth that filled our home were overwhelming. Everything I had been searching for after Jessica so ruthlessly tore my world apart. Samantha and I often talked about expanding our little family. We had an incredible support network, thriving careers, and a home that was perfect for raising children. What more could we ask for? I'd sometimes catch Samantha watching Ethan play with Greg's youngest and see that wistful smile on her face, one that spoke of dreams for the future. Every time I looked at my wife and son, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had fought through unimaginable darkness and betrayal to reach this point, and I'd never take it for granted again. This is what true love and loyalty looked like. After everything I endured with Jessica, I was determined to cherish this life and the people in it. For a long time, I was consumed by hatred and disgust toward Jessica. The way she betrayed me, the horrifying depths she sank to with her murderous schemes, it left me unable to feel anything but contempt. But then, about a year into her prison sentence, I got a call that changed everything. Jessica had suffered a complete psychotic break. She was reportedly in terrible shape, both mentally and physically. Against my better judgment, I decided to visit her. Samantha encouraged me, saying, "Sometimes facing the past is the only way to truly let it go." When I arrived at the prison hospital wing, Alexander, ever the protective friend, insisted on joining me, just in case things went south. I wasn't sure if it was for emotional support or legal backup, but I was grateful for his presence. The sight of Jessica shook me to my core. She was curled up on a hospital bed, rocking back and forth and mumbling incoherently to her pregnant belly. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes vacant, and her once confident demeanor was gone. Suddenly, she ripped off her hospital gown and started screaming at her stomach, yelling things like, "This baby isn't yours, Aaron. It's not Marcus's. I gave this body away when it didn't belong to me." Tears streamed down her face as she clawed at her skin like she wanted to rip it off. It was one of the most haunting things I'd ever witnessed. The prison doctors rushed in to sedate her and restrain her. As they carried her away, Jessica turned to me with a hollow, broken expression. "It was supposed to be yours, Aaron. It was supposed to be," she whispered. I stood there frozen, unable to reconcile the person she had become with the woman I once loved. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy, but the anger and pain were still too raw. Alexander placed a hand on my shoulder, quietly reminding me, "You don't owe her anything, Michael. Let this be her burden to bear." A week later, the prison called again. Jessica had given birth to a healthy baby girl, despite her mental state. The doctors asked if I'd be willing to take a paternity test since Jessica's condition left many questions unanswered. Samantha and I agreed it was time to close that chapter once and for all. The results came back. The baby wasn't mine. The father was Marcus, one of Jessica's numerous flings at her workplace. Yet another layer of betrayal added to her already twisted story. I wasn't sure whether to feel relieved that I wasn't biologically tied to Jessica forever or disgusted by her deceit. Jessica, in a rare moment of clarity, made it clear she didn't want to raise her daughter. She insisted the baby deserved a stable family and a fresh start. For all her flaws, I had to respect her decision to prioritize the child's well-being. That's when Samantha first suggested adopting the baby. At the time, the idea seemed outrageous. Adopting the daughter of my cheating, psychotic ex-wife felt like stepping into uncharted territory. I even brought it up with Melanie and Greg over coffee, half expecting them to talk me out of it. Instead, Melanie said, "Michael, don't let the sins of her mother define that little girl. She's innocent, and you and Samantha could give her the life she deserves." After weeks of discussion and plenty of soul-searching, I decided to move past my initial discomfort. Samantha's compassion reminded me that the child was a victim of circumstance, just like me. Together, we decided to adopt her and raise her as our own. Of course, Alexander handled the legalities, ensuring the adoption process went smoothly. Greg and Stephanie threw us a celebratory dinner when it was finalized, and even Ethan, Alexander's daughter Claire, and Samantha's parents came by to meet the newest member of our family. Of course, Jessica's baby daddy, Marcus, couldn't resist stirring up drama. As soon as he heard about the adoption, he tried to swoop in, demanding custody and child support from me. Like I was going to let that dirtbag, who had the audacity to sleep with my wife, be a part of Ava's life. No. Alexander, ever the legal pitbull, went nuclear on Marcus from day one. He filed a paternity lawsuit to officially establish Marcus as the father, making sure any responsibility for the child fell squarely on his shoulders. Marcus tried every slimy trick in the book to avoid it, dodging court dates, filing bogus counterclaims, and even attempting to slander Samantha and me in public. But Alexander wasn't having any of it. He overwhelmed Marcus with a tidal wave of legal motions, depositions, and court dates, leaving him no room to breathe. Eventually, Marcus had no choice but to accept responsibility. I'll never forget the look on his smug face when the judge ruled that not only was he the biological father, but he'd also have to start cutting monthly child support checks. Alexander, in his usual no-mercy style, secured the maximum possible payments, enough to really sting. "That's what happens when you mess with my family, you sleazeball." I muttered to myself as Marcus slinked out of the courtroom. Despite everything, Samantha and I decided to honor Ava's connection to her biological mother in a small way. We named her Ava Emily Davis, keeping Jessica's name as her middle. She was part of our family now, and from the moment we brought her home, she fit right in, as if she had always been meant to be with us. Samantha and I showered Ava with all the love and affection in the world. We'd cuddle on the couch for Disney movie marathons, spend weekends at the park, and relish all those precious moments of her early childhood. When Ethan Michael was born a couple of years later, Ava took to being a big sister like it was second nature. She'd push his stroller around the neighborhood, help feed him, and read him bedtime stories with such care and nurturing affection that it melted my heart. The bond between them was beautiful from the very beginning. As Ava grew older, I started to notice how much of Jessica's personality and spirit shone through in her. She had that same radiant smile and those expressive eyes that could light up a room or melt your heart. But she also had Jessica's fiery determination and stubbornness, traits that Samantha and I lovingly teased were glimpses of the old Jessica before her descent into darkness. We made a point to be open and honest with Ava about her origins. From a young age, she knew her biological mother was Jessica and that her mother had made some terrible choices. But she also knew that Samantha and I were her real parents, the ones who loved her unconditionally and gave her a stable, happy life. As hard as it was, we never lied or hid the truth, wanting Ava to grow up with clarity and security. I dreaded the day Ava might want to meet Jessica or Marcus, but Samantha reminded me we couldn't deny her the closure she might need. Sure enough, when Ava turned 18, she started asking pointed questions about her biological parents. As painful as it was, we agreed to arrange supervised visits with each of them separately. The first visit with Marcus was a disaster. Ava had built up this idealized image of her father, a charming, misunderstood figure who might have some redeeming qualities. That fantasy came crashing down the moment Marcus opened his mouth. He immediately started mouthing off with misogynistic garbage, insulting Ava's intelligence and belittling her for wanting to meet him. Alexander, who insisted on attending as her legal advocate, nearly threw the guy out of the meeting himself. Ava stormed out in tears, her illusions of Marcus shattered into pieces. Samantha was there waiting with open arms to comfort her, reassuring her that Marcus's behavior wasn't her fault. I was furious, but Alexander reminded me this was necessary. She needed to see who he really is. And he was right. Ava left that meeting knowing the truth about Marcus and never looked back. When Marcus lost his temper and shoved me against the wall during Ava's disastrous visit, it was the final straw. That scumbag went ballistic, and I wasn't about to let him get away with it. I retaliated, landing a solid punch that sent him sprawling before the guards intervened. Unsurprisingly, Marcus was thrown back into jail that night. Watching Ava's heartbreak after the encounter tore me up inside. She had clung to this idealized version of him, a kind, caring father figure, and having that illusion shattered so brutally was devastating. All I could do was hold her close, remind her she was loved, and assure her that her real family would always have her back. The reunion with Jessica was a whole different kind of emotional chaos. Ava met her in a secure room at the prison, just in case things went sideways. When Jessica saw Ava for the first time, a stunning young woman she had given up so many years ago, the anguish on her face was impossible to miss. For a few long moments, neither of them spoke. They just stared, taking in the shared resemblance and the years lost. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Then, like a dam breaking, Jessica collapsed into body-racking sobs. She crawled across the floor and pulled Ava into a tight embrace, whispering over and over, "I'm so sorry." To her credit, Ava handled the scene with incredible grace and compassion. She gently stroked Jessica's hair and whispered, "It's okay. I'm here now." Watching them together, I saw for the first time the depth of Jessica's pain and regret, the burden she had been carrying for all those years. From that day on, Ava decided to visit Jessica every few months. She said she needed to understand her biological mother and humanize her in some way. I respected that. It wasn't a choice I could make for her, but I admired her courage in facing such a complicated relationship. As for me, Jessica and I will never be friends. Too much water has passed under that bridge. But seeing her take responsibility and show genuine remorse helped me reach a place of partial forgiveness. Don't get me wrong, Jessica's past actions were unforgivable. She made choices that destroyed lives and left scars I'll carry forever. But holding on to that rage wasn't doing me any favors. Samantha was right. We had built something beautiful out of the ashes, and Jessica didn't deserve to live in my head rent-free anymore. These days, Jessica remains in prison, likely for life, but Ava tells me through her visits that Jessica has found peace and is trying to better herself. The selfish, destructive person who once tried to kill me for money seems to be gone. I'm content to let that part of her stay buried, as long as she continues to take accountability for her actions. As for my family, we keep thriving. Ava is all grown up now, pursuing her dream career as a child psychologist. She married an incredible man, and they recently had a beautiful baby girl, whom I'm completely obsessed with doting on as her grandpa. Samantha and I have the same rock-solid partnership we built after the wreckage of betrayal. We've faced the worst life could throw at us and come out stronger. Do I still have moments where the trauma resurfaces? Of course. Something as harrowing as Jessica's betrayal and attempted murder leaves its mark. But I also recognize how damn lucky I am. I survived being betrayed and nearly killed by someone I loved more than life itself. And I found the courage to love again. Samantha's unwavering support, loyalty, and love made that possible. This family we've built is the ultimate screw you to Jessica and the demons that consumed her. It's proof that no matter how broken you feel, there's always a chance to rebuild something even better. If you're facing betrayal or heartbreak yourself, I want you to know there's light on the other side if you keep pushing forward. It won't be easy. There will be setbacks, sleepless nights, and moments of despair. But with real people in your corner, people like Samantha and Alexander were for me, you can find your way through. Let go of the hatred and anger, even if you can't forget. Those feelings will hollow you out if you let them. Find a way to forgive, not for them, but for yourself. Because the greatest revenge is allowing yourself to live a life filled with love, joy, and people who truly care for you. Move forward one step at a time. Your redemption story is just beginning.